Hey, this is Matt Hodge with Step 2 Digital Production. This is a little kind of video demonstration to go along with a blog post I recently did about how more traditional art methods are influencing my digital art methods for texture creation. So to start off with, I'm going to do a texture for kind of a dirt road path. So let's have a look at that. Okay, the first thing I do is I go to my concept art and I select the colors I'm going to use based on the palette used in the concept art. Okay, so here we have the browns and the greens. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is, as you can see, I'm putting guides down. These guides are to help me block in color separation, right? So I put down my base brown that's going to be the dirt road. I put down a kind of a light brown that I'm going to smear into the sides and to start creating some depth. Okay, I put down the dark green. This dark green is going to help create the shadowing of the kind of the hill of the green flowing down into the dirt, and of course I put the light green on the outer side, which is where the grass highlights are going to be. Alright, so now I've begun a process of smudging color around, and this is kind of what I'm talking about, and the biggest takeaway I got from traditional painting is not to so much try and manipulate a picture as to put color roughly where I want some sort of detail to be, and then I take the smudging tool and I start smudging pixels into place so that the color goes exactly where I want it to go. And it's kind of like layers of abstraction. I'm doing kind of cartoony textures, so I'm not too concerned about where and how I smudge, other than I try to go in straight lines. You don't want to smudge like a 5-year-old with a crayon where he's just coloring in all different directions. You want to decide a direction you're going to make your strokes and kind of stick with that. So okay, here we go. You can see my lighter browns have mixed with my darker browns, and I'm starting to get a nice base for a dirt road. I've used a natural smudge brush on the side, so not a smooth brush, but as you see, one with kind of prickly edges. This has helped scrape that dark color into the brown, and now I'm scraping the light green into the dark green, and you can see how that's starting to create my effect of grass. I also did a little cheat with a drop shadow. It's the nice thing about being digital is we have these little cheats. So the next thing I've done is I've thrown down white blotches and I'm smudging them with that same kind of natural brush as a smudge tool. This is starting to create the highlighting of the grass. So it's giving the effect of a highlighted grass, and then of course that darker green is the shadowing of the grass as it dips down into that dirt road. The guides not only help me kind of make sure I keep the color in the area I want to keep the color, but it's going to help me when it comes time to tile. About to apply an offset here. Wait for it. It's going to be filter, other, offset. Boom, there we go. Now we can see what the seam is, and we just smudge the color around to get rid of that seam. Now it's going to tile perfectly when I need it to tile. So let's jump into the next example I want to show you. Alright, in this next example, I'm painting a patch. It's going to be a cloth patch. It's going to be a tileable pattern that I can use things for like tents and canvases and things like that. So what I did was I used a harder brush to create kind of I call it an organic looking square. It's not perfect. And then again, that smudge tool, my key things, a paintbrush and a smudge tool are the key tools I use in Photoshop. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select now I have my square, it's smudged out, so I took these hard lines and instead of having a hard line square, we now have kind of the shadow of the edge of this kind of organic looking square. Now I'm going to sample a blue color from our concept art and use the paint bucket to fill it in. And the nice thing is, you'll notice it doesn't fill in perfectly to the edges because that black line was smudged. Now we can start smudging the white that's left between my square shadow and the solid color, and this also helps to start creating a sense of depth in the patch. So I'm just going to keep going about this to get it looking patchy like. Alright, there we go. Now the nice thing is, well actually no, I so use the burn tool, make some depth as you like. So okay, now I've done that, I've copied the patch, and now this is important. I am duplicating it. One of the joys of Photoshop is you don't have to paint every item that's going to be similar, right? So the patch has been copied, and now what I want to do is use hue and saturation to choose the other colors. I'm going for an RGB scheme, so it went kind of fast there, but what I did was I went to Image Adjustments, Hue and Saturation, and then I changed the hue slider so that I can pull a green and a blue that are from kind of the, a green and a red that are from the same color space as that blue. So that way the colors all go together nicely. There we go. Now I can take this and just start duplicating that pattern, placing it where I like, until I've filled in the entire area. Okay, and I'm going to get to be doing an offset on this again. When I do an offset, this is a 1024 by 1024 texture. I'm going to offset both sides by 512. Again, that's filter other offset. And this is going to create my seams in the middle. Now before I do the offset, I'm about to do the offset, and you'll just notice I also cropped it. The reason I cropped it was because the amount of patches I copied actually take up more space in the canvas. So if I do an offset, it kind of messes with my offset. By using that crop and going over the canvas, I ensure that all of the elements that are going to be offset are the dimensions of my actual canvas. Okay, so I did the offset and it made those hard lines, and now I'm just putting some patches over them to kind of cover up those hard lines. Painting some lines that I'm going to smudge into shadow along the back there. And there you go, you see that got rid of it. Now let's pull that offset off. And there we are, that's going to patch nicely. Now we want to make stitches. So I'm using a dark color, and remember, in reality there really is no true black. True black really only occurs in digital space, so I always use an almost black when I need to use black. And then I'm going back through it with an almost white, and you'll see I made those as hard lines, and then I start smudging them together, and it creates the impression of stitches. And this will be a nice tileable pattern that I'm going to apply to first to a windmill in my scene, and here you can see that in Softimage. And then here it is in the Unity 3D game engine. Now, one of the things that's so great about painting your own textures this way is you get to control the lighting within the actual texture itself. So when your textures all come together in an environment, they don't look like models that were just pulled from different collections and slapped together. You can put them all in here with a kind of a constant lighting, and they look like they all belong together in the same scene. This saves you from having to use a bunch of real-time lights and with different colors to kind of make everything look good. So this whole scene is lit nicely. The shadows are baked in, so those aren't calculated dynamically, and the whole scene is lit by just one light, and it looks pretty nice that way. So if you wanted to get into more detail, you know, I mean, this looks good for cartoony stuff, but if you wanted more realism, what you would do is start with a larger canvas, do your abstract color. It'll look kind of cartoony, but then since you start with a larger canvas, you can zoom in and have more pixels in a smaller space, where you can use the same process of throwing down color, smudging it into the shape you want to create finer details. And that way when you zoom out, the finer your details become, the more you mix and blend the color, the more realistic things are going to look. So this doesn't necessarily replace using photographs to pull textures from. It really depends on the project you're using. But this is a method I've embraced based on my experience with traditional painting, and it helps me take full control over how my environments look, and it helps me develop my own unique style so they don't look like cookie cutter things off of some place like TurboSquid. Alright, thanks for watching. I'm always growing in my skill sets, so as I learn new things, I'll be happy to share them with you. And you can go ahead and check out my blog over at www.step2digital.com. Thanks for watching.